already recording, Lee. I can see that.
Yes. I've got my backup computer here just in case something goes awry.
Okay, right, that stream is working. Let me copy it, because I'm going to put this on the iPad, Lee, and I will be able to see how many people are viewing it.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever the number is, mate, when you tell me, will you just times it by 250?
Well, I might not use it at all. I just think it'd be interesting, because if it gets into the hundreds, I might just stick it on the front of one of the questions and leave it up to you whether you tell anyone. So it'd be like from our, from the website, which has been viewed by, I don't know, 80, 90 people.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you can always communicate with me whatever you want on that questions channel.
There's a massive one person watching it now. Sorry, go on.
You can only see that if you do it on an iPad.
No, it's on the YouTube feed. So if you click on watch the YouTube feed, you can see the actual YouTube feed that Daz is then taking and putting in the website homepage. And as I look at it now, it's about 30 seconds old. 2 watching it now.
You know what? I don't think I've chosen mute them upon entry, but that's okay because we can chat with them when they come in, can't we? And then we'll just start muting them all. Yeah,
that's what I was going to ask, whether you wanted them unmuted when they entered. So
yeah, I think they currently are, which is fine because we have a little chit chat. Who forgot? Nice and early.
Hello.
Hello.
Hiya.
How are you, Liz?
Good. How are you?
Very well. So Molly, and this is James and Darren.
James.
Hi. Darren is producing. James is a creative. And you're first here. Welcome.
Yes. The big countdown to the event. Finally here.
We are 23 minutes from broadcast.
Oh my gosh.
So we did a wonderful address rehearsal with Bob yesterday.
Yeah.
It went really well. So he joined us from his home in San Francisco, and we just did a run through with him. We broadcast it live on the site for 10 minutes just to test everything, and it went really well. But the wonderful thing about it was that he's so lovely.
He's so nice.
Yeah.
He's so funny.
Yeah. So how have you been, Liz? You okay?
Well, I like you've done your hair and makeup special.
What, me or Molly?
Yeah, fresh haircut for today, right, Lee?
Well, Claire got the clippers out, and I thought, just do it on a number one, get it over and done with.
Yeah, I'm pretty desperate for a haircut, but I don't think I can go for the same approach.
Right, I'm just gonna do a countdown so I can work out the lag time. So excuse me for 30 seconds. 30, 29, 28, 27, 26, 25, 24, 23, 22, 21, 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. 23 seconds lag.
23 seconds. So should I use that as my reference for the endpoint?
Yes, please.
Okay. That's good.
So have you got anything to do after this, Liz, or are we the last task of the day?
I think, yeah, hopefully you're the last task. But then after this, I'll probably look at my emails and have a load of emails come in. But fingers crossed, we can have a glass of wine after this.
Hopefully a load of praise from your colleagues who tuned in and congratulated you on your astute question. Or questions.
I was about to say, just got two.
So the way it will work, Liz, is we'll go live at 4 o'clock. I will do an intro. Welcome, Bob. Welcome all the guests. Welcome the people who are watching us online. I'll ask Bob a quick question, and then I just throw him over to you guys. So there'll be about another 7 or 8 people joining us, all being well, in the next
5 minutes.
Next 5 minutes. And I think in total we'll ask him about 20 questions, 15 of them coming from, you know, those of us here in the Zoom, and then the others from the website, people who are asking them live. And Bob's also going to do a reading from the book for us.
Great.
Yeah, so it should be fun.
That'd be good.
Should be fun. So Darren, what time are you going to start the countdown? Are you going to start it at 1:45 on the site?
I've put the splash page up on the site now.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
Lee.
Yeah.
Just a quick note. I've just had an email from Verity, and she's not going to be able to make it.
Okay, that's fine. We'll just what I'll do, and James, this is why I was asking for those. You know, if the questions come in and they're quite long-winded, if we can somehow make them punchier, you know, we might lose a few guests. I think we might also lose Nick Moxon because he agreed to do it without asking the comms people at the Universal Music Group whether or not that was allowed, and you know they're pretty strict. So you know there's every chance that we'll lose a couple of guests. So what I will do is just compensate by, so with Verity, for example, she was asking one question, so I'll definitely ask an extra question from the live audience. But actually, if they come in quite punchy, I can probably ask an extra 2 or 3. I mean, I think we should probably run till, well, certainly no later than 5 o'clock. I don't want to keep Bob for longer than, or anyone else really, longer than an hour and a quarter. So I'll just take a feel for it. What's Verity saying? Why is she not coming? What's she got? She got something better to do. She got a better offer.
No, she has put, P.S. I'm annoyed to be missing this. Genuinely, the only social thing I've done is lockdown, so gutted to miss it. Well, oh no, sorry, hold on. She said, I am hoping it won't take too long and I'll be able to hop on midway if that's possible. But I'm guessing she's like quite early on in the lineup, I believe.
Well, you know what you could do, because I don't know if I will see, because I can see everybody currently on this screen. I will see if she turns up, and if she does, I can ask her to ask a question. So she can join if she wants to, and maybe what you could do, Molly, if she does join. So I'm going to be flipping between my script and Slack to see the questions coming in.
Yeah.
So if you and James is updating that questions channel on Slack. So if it is that she comes in, maybe you could just tell me on that channel.
Yeah, I also might get her to text me.
Yes, Bob.
Hello.
Feels like it was only yesterday.
How you
Bob,
doing?
very well. You know everybody here with the exception of Liz. Liz, hello. This Liz. This is Bob. Bob, Liz.
Hello, Liz. How are you?
Very well, thanks. How are you?
Good. I'm great, thank you.
Great to meet you.
Ditto.
How's everything across the water where you are?
Well, it's kind of cloudy and cool today.
Mm.
It's supposed to be, I'm going up to Lake Tahoe as soon as we're done here for a week of vacation. Vacation from what? I'm not sure. I haven't been doing it. But Yeah, and it's supposed to be cool the next couple of days. Then it's going to get warm and sunny and nice. So that'll be good.
Nice.
What happens at Lake Tahoe? What are you going to do up there?
It's a very beautiful and relaxing place. And mostly I swim and I play a little golf and I read and do a lot of crossword puzzles.
Okay.
And yeah, not terribly active. It's a nice, relaxing kind of place.
That sounds good.
Yeah, it's a beautiful lake.
The calm before the storm.
It is exactly. I'm a little bit nervous.
We knew it would hit at some point. Hopefully we should start seeing a couple of people joining from this point.
Liz, are you in London?
No, I used to live in London, but I've moved back to where my folks are from originally, which is Birmingham, which is I don't know if you know.
Is it north?
UK geography. It's like bang in the middle. It's the Midlands.
Oh, the Midlands. Okay.
So yeah, it's quite good. You can get down to London in about an hour. But yeah, in the suburbs.
Hi, Bob.
Hello, Kevin. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. How are you? Great to meet you, and thanks for this.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for participating. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yes,
Hello,
Kev.
Lee.
Yes, Kev.
How are you doing?
You smarten up all right.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, I think the webcam is kind. Yeah, just as long as you don't see the back of my head. I see you've gone for the short and consistent cut. That's good.
Yeah. It's funny actually because I've just, well, it's not funny. It's tragic. I've just I'm going bald is the long and short of it. So that you're now seeing the short of it. I finally had to give in.
Bald is beautiful. Bald is beautiful.
It works, Beely.
I read somewhere yesterday that bald guys are far more susceptible to coronavirus for some reason.
Sounds legit.
I'm not kidding you. I'm serious. Apparently bald guys get coronavirus more frequently than non-bald people.
Don't share that link with me. I'm going to forget you. So Bob, this is Sam, Bob.
Hi, Bob.
Hello, Sam. How are you?
Not too shabby. How are you?
I'm very shabby, but let's forget about that.
But you'll make it through.
I think so.
So we are going live in 12 minutes. We're waiting for another 3 or 4 guests to join us. Hoping to get a decent audience on the website. There's certainly been a lot of chatter about what we're doing, so fingers crossed. The dress rehearsal went well yesterday, Bob. I was pleased with that.
Good. Glad that went well. Let's see if we can do something good today too.
Oh yes, Bethan.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Good.
Bethan, Bob, Bethan.
Hello.
Hi, Bethan.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Thanks for doing this.
It's okay.
So Molly, I'm now at the extent on my Zoom here. I'm now I can only see 5, 6 other people. I don't know whether or not I can.
You can resize your window.
How would I do that?
Click in a bottom right-hand corner or left-hand corner and just click and drag till everyone fits.
Let's see. Jen, you're here. Nick, you're here. Sanj, you're here. Everybody's here. Amazing. Hey. Fantastic. I think we've got a full house. Nick's muted. Jen's muted. Oh, Kev's now muted. Is that you, Daz? Are you muting?
No.
I'll just unmute everyone for now.
Thanks. I felt imprisoned then for a minute.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened there. I didn't mute anyone.
I've never seen that before. That's interesting. So look, we're going to broadcast live in 10 minutes. Wonderful that you've all joined us. Thank you so much. We'll mute you all before we broadcast, about a minute before. And then when we go live, I'll do an intro. Welcome, Bob. Ask Bob a question. And then I'm going to go over to you guys for your questions. And we're also, of course, broadcasting live on the Silence website. We've had now over 100 people sign up via Eventbrite, which is a good sign. Plus, I know, I know Beth, and you've been plugging us hard within your agency, because I've had people coming to me going, "Oh, I didn't know Bethan was doing that." So hopefully we'll get a nice crowd.
So will you invite each of us to ask a question, Lee? How will it work order-wise?
Just sit tight. Just sit tight. So when I'm going to introduce you, and I'm going to give you a direction. I'm going to give you direction in terms of which of your questions to ask.
Oh, great. Okay.
You know, as it happens, it'll make sense to you.
Cool.
It'll make sense.
Also, might just be worth noting that at the end of the session, when Lee's kind of doing his outro, I will just need to mute everyone again, just to make sure that the camera stays on Lee. And then once he's finished, there will still be sort of 30 seconds-ish after that, just because we have to allow for a bit of a time delay between the live stream. So I don't want to cut it off while some people are still seeing Lee doing his outro. So just, if you're all still mute and after that, then it's just because that's why I'm allowing it to do.
Would you like us to wave goodbye like this?
Yeah, might be nice.
I think as well, it's worth saying, Bob, that Nick, who's joined us, he's also in California. You two are down the road from each other. A little down the road. He's in
Hello.
Los Angeles.
Good morning. Good, thank you. Yeah, how are you doing? Where are you?
I'm in Oakland. Where are you?
Nice. I'm in Venice.
Oh, Venice. Good.
Nice and chilled here.
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh, 8 minutes. 8 minutes to broadcast, loads of time.
I was getting jealous of everyone's cups of tea.
Yeah. No, I ran and got one just before, just to keep me going throughout.
I'm going to go fill up. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Oh, there. So I'm going to take the remaining coffee.
Thanks again, everybody, for doing this. It's so good of you. It's so exciting for me. We've been planning for this for about a month now, and it's actually about to happen. It's brilliant.
I have to admit, as a dyslexic working in the media industry, it's really nice when you open a book and the first line is, "I like writing short books."
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, thank you.
Have you guys done one of your book clubs on Zoom before? Is this the first one?
This is the very first, Jen. Yeah, the very first. So previously, book club has met in the pub. We tended to meet in the pub. Occasionally, we would do events around the book. So we've done an event around Bob's last book, Bad Men, and we did a podcast around that one as well. But this is the first time that we've taken book club online, if you will. You know, I suppose it was a very obvious way to react to everything that's been happening. But actually, one thing we've found about doing it is it's really broadened the audience for us, because of course, you know, we can now chat about the book with everybody. Although there is part of me that would love to also be doing this with you in the pub.
Yeah. I know we should have it wines or beers instead of teas.
Yeah, it's Friday.
Never know what's in the mug.
Yeah.
Okay, 5 minutes. So Daz, you're going to you'll count me down at 1.
Yeah.
Gonna kick me out, Daz. Otherwise, we'll get horrendous feedback when it boots in. So I'll leave now, Lee.
All right, mate. I'll see you in a bit.
See you, James.
James, jump back in. Jump back in at the end.
Will do.
See you in a bit.
So James is our creative director. He's also quality control, so he's going to be just observing and making sure that it's all going just so. But we've done so many bloody rehearsals to get it right. So yeah, fingers crossed.
Lee, I think there's an opportunity for. Did I get this right? Other people who are joining to ask questions.
So
how are you doing that?
We're broadcasting live on the Silence website, and anyone who goes to the site will see us there. We've got a form where you can put in your name and your location and ask a question, and then James, who's just left us, he's feeding those questions to me, and I can see them as they come in here. So as they come in, I'll just include those questions alongside the questions that you guys have prepared for Bob.
We've explained to him only easy questions, right?
Yeah.
Surely not.
Good.
Okay, 3 minutes.
Thanks, Daz. Yeah, and keep it clean as well. No swearing.
No swearing? Seriously?
Yeah, because otherwise YouTube kick us off.
Really?
as we discovered from the rehearsal.
YouTube.
Yeah, get it out of your system now before we go live.
That's a monopoly.
Yeah.
Can you hear my daughter playing in the background?
No.
Okay, good.
No. Well, you can.
Yeah.
No, it's quiet. Yeah, it's quiet. It's good.
She's welcome to ask questions if she likes.
Yeah. Yeah, bring it up a lot.
Interesting. She's only 4. I don't know what she'll say.
That
My,
The best kind of questions.
my daughter plays video games, like very simple video games on the tablet, and the challenge of dismissing the adverts has become as much a game as the actual gameplay itself. She's really learning how to do it now. Look for the cross and don't click on the links. It's good, educational.
You're raising her all wrong.
Okay, 1:20. Molly,
Yeah.
if you can mute everyone else bar me for the second, please.
Yes, that's not
Lee,
a problem.
I'll remind you that once I finish talking and get muted, that you need to just make a noise so that you focus straight away from a minute onwards.
Yeah.
There's a minute now. So if you mute now, Molly.
Hello and welcome to the Silence Media Book Club. For this, our first online meeting, we are thrilled to be joined by the American author Bob Hoffman. We're going to talk to Bob about his new book, Advertising for Skeptics, which he describes as a universal musing on the nature of contemporary advertising. Described as an acid-tongue genius, Bob is a keynote speaker at our conferences, has written several books about advertising, and he is, of course, the keeper of the Ad Contrarian blog, which is devoured by our industry's internal critics. Bob is to advertising as the fox is to the henhouse. In Advertising for Skeptics, he writes that people in our industry are misinformed to a degree that is startling, that we respect no history, we observe no principles, we have no connective tissue, that every generation tosses out what was learned before and declares it dead. Bob, welcome to Book Club.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here, Lee.
And welcome to our readers, a wondrous cast from across the industry who have joined us today to ask Bob their questions about advertising for skeptics. And finally, welcome to those of you who are watching us live online. Bob is also looking forward to hearing your questions. Bob, you write in your new book that nothing about advertising is either very clear or very easy. Why do you think that is?
Because nothing about human beings is very clear or very easy, and advertising is an endeavor that tries to understand and motivate human beings, and it's very hard to do. It's a difficult thing to base your career on, and as you go on, you learn more and more that things that you think you knew, you don't really know. And so that's why that's the answer.
Would you say it's part art, part science?
Yeah, it's we're trying to make it more scientific, but I'm not really sure we're using a lot of mathematics, we're using a lot of technology. I'm not sure we're using it very well. As a matter of fact, I am sure we're not using it very well. But we're trying to make it more scientific. It's not easy to do. It's, you know, we're kind of like drunken sailors who've been out at sea for 2 years, and then we come into port and we get drunk and get venereal disease. And that's how we are with technology. For years, for decades, the advertising industry has been criticized for not being scientific, for being too much about feel and about opinions. Now, all of a sudden we have technology and we've jumped into it so fast and with such little, what I think is discretion, that we're getting drunk and coming down with venereal disease on technology. And we need to be a little more careful about how we approach technology, I think.
Okay. Let's have our first question from my colleague, Molly White at Silence Media.
Hi, Bob.
Hi, Molly.
I have a bit of a two-part question for you, so I hope you don't mind. But in Advertising for Skeptics, you report that only 5% of people within the advertising industry are over the age of 50. So I guess my first question is, you know, what happens to them when they reach 50? Where do they go? And then also, what do you think the industry misses by no longer employing them?
Can I answer the second part first?
Sure.
Good. One of the big problems in the advertising industry is that we are ruled by legends and rituals that have gone on for years. And one of the legends is that advertising has to be directed at young people, and that's one of the rituals also. We worship the 18 to 34-year-old age group. But the fact is, here in the States at least, the majority of consumer spending is done by people over 50. And only about 5 to 10% of advertising is aimed at people over 50. And this makes absolutely no sense in my mind. And it costs marketers, I think, billions of dollars a year for ignoring mature audiences who spend most of the money and buy most of the stuff. So that's what we miss. The first part of your question, where do people over 50 go after they're through with their advertising career? And I think the answer is they evaporate. I don't know where they go. I don't know what happens to them. So many of them, so many very highly qualified, talented people are thrown away. And the thing that's so bad about this for our industry is that in a lot of fields, you really don't reach your maximum capacity and potential until you're over 40 and over 50. If you look at literature and if you look at art, the great literary people and the great artists all did most of their best work when they were over 40 and over 50. It's not like in science and math where a lot of the great work is done by younger people. In writing and in art, which are the methods that we use to communicate, people who are older are often reaching their peak just when we're getting rid of them. And I think this does a lot of harm to our industry and to our clients.
That's an interesting question, Molly. Thank you. Especially interesting to me as a 47-year-old working in advertising. And in fact, we've had a question come in live from Ashley, who is in London. And Ashley says, hi, Bob. Any sign that ageism in our industry, both in terms of employment and in terms of targeting the older consumer, might be being addressed? Do you see a change, Bob?
Hi, Ashley. I don't see a change, but you know, I'm not inside the agency world anymore. I'm outside as an observer. I'm retired from the agency business, but what I see is the exact opposite, that we're worshiping youth more than ever, and that we are ignoring the people who spend most of the money more than ever.
Okay, so our next question, Bob, is from Genevieve Barrett from Simon & Schuster. Jen, you've got a question for Bob about social media.
Yeah, so I wondered, we talk about social media platforms really relying on the dopamine hit that users get when someone engages or likes their content. And I just wondered, you talk about brands' short-term tactics, and I wondered if you thought that was the industry's version of that, really, in i.e. we're getting obsessed with short-term tactics like driving clicks, and is that sort of the industry version of that dopamine hit in social media?
Well, first, let me ask you this, Jen. Why aren't you publishing my books? That's the most important question. Okay, next.
The next one.
Yes and no. I think it's yes. We love the hit that we get when we see that we're getting clicks and we're getting, you know, that makes us feel good as marketers, and that's part of it. That's, you know, the emotional part of it. But also there is there's a terrible kind of prejudice toward the short term versus the long term that is ruled by the financial people and the big shots at corporations who don't understand and can't understand brand building, because brand building is not something that you can quantify easily. And these people are quantifiers, and they want to see every day that what they're spending on marketing is actually paying off that day or that week. And it's very hard to explain. I've had to do it so many times in my career, stand up in front of people who are financial people, basically, and explain to them that you can't use the logic of cause and effect in brand building. It doesn't work that way. It works in a mysterious way in which the weekly measurement of results doesn't really tell you what's happening long term. And as an advertising practitioner, it was one of the most frustrating things I ever did, to tell them that just because you're selling stuff this week doesn't mean you're building your brand over the long term. It's very hard for a lot of business people to understand that.
Jen, do you see that in your career? Do you face that battle, that pressure between short and long term?
Yeah, absolutely. And especially in sort of authors that we're trying to build as brand authors, particularly authors that have series. Yeah, it's especially when you're trying to justify to author or agent how that campaign is going and how you want to do it. Yeah, it's really hard to sort of justify your reasoning for doing something that's not going to have an instant impact on sales that week, and actually it might have an impact on building that author for their brand, you know, a year down the line, 2 years down the line, even further. But yeah, on actual weekly sales, yeah, it's really hard to justify sometimes.
And the problem is that a lot of the executives, particularly the CMOs in corporations, aren't going to be there in 2 years. They don't care what's going to happen in 2 years. They're being measured, they're being evaluated, their salaries are based on what's happening today. And you know, on the list of what's important to them, today is so much more important than 2 years from now, when they are probably going to be in another company.
Okay, well, thanks, Jen, for that question. Bob, Liz Famoso from Universal McCann, she has a question for you about ad fraud.
About?
Ad fraud.
Ad fraud, okay.
Yeah, Bob. You deliver some really punchy stats in your book about the scale of ad fraud and viewability rates being ridiculously low as well. Your conclusion is that the only way that we can rise above the giants such as Google and Facebook and demand a change across the industry is to end tracking. So my question to you is, do you really think that that's realistic? And beyond the application of ad verification technology, what small measures can online media planner buyers such as myself, what can we do to make a difference?
Is it realistic to end, let's do one question at a time. Is it realistic to end tracking? I think it is. I think there has been a lot of progress made in consumers understanding the dangers of tracking. And I think that it is first steps have been made, you know, the GDPR, it's been, I think so far, a failure, but it was a first step, and I think it's moving in the right direction. And I think pressure from consumers will keep it moving in the right direction. So is it realistic to expect tracking to end? I would say it has a reasonable chance of happening. It's certainly not for sure, but I think it has that there's a reasonable chance that a lot of the most grotesque kinds of tracking will end someday. Not today, not next week, but someday. It's much too dangerous in democratic societies to have marketers know everything about us, what we're doing, where we're going, who we're speaking to, what we're saying. Too dangerous. The question of what media planners and buyers can do to minimize fraud, the most important thing is to get educated by the people who aren't within the ecosystem, if you will. You know, so many people have so much ad fraud doesn't just pay off the fraudsters. Ad fraud contributes a lot of money to a lot of people along the ecosystem. And there are a lot of people who are heavily invested in getting not too serious about ad fraud. Remember, a lot of agencies make money based on volume. You know, they're getting a commission, and fraudulent clicks and fraudulent websites and fraudulent audiences create revenue for agencies too. It's not just the fraudsters. Now, I'm not saying that the agencies are complicit with the fraudsters, but as a byproduct of fraud, there are a lot of companies all along the line who aren't fraudsters, but are profiting from fraud. So the most important thing, listen to people who are giving you an alternative point of view. Augustin Fu is one of them. MMI is another company that does that here in the States. These people they're not invested, they're not making money from this. And there's a guy, Professor Cavazos, I think his name is, I've written about him. He's an economist and he's written about fraud. So you have to dig a little deeper than the usual suspects to find out who's giving a completely different view about fraud that you can learn from. I am not a fraud researcher. I can't help you with it. I just report what people who I trust tell me and write about. But as someone who's responsible for this, I think it's important that you hear alternative voices from the voices you hear within the industry.
Thank you, Bob. You are watching the Silence Media Book Club. Bob Hoffman is talking about his new book, Advertising for Skeptics. Please ask us a question and we'll put it to Bob. Let's have another question, Bob, from one of our online readers. Mark, this time from Manchester. He says, you do a lot of Facebook and Google bashing in your weekly newsletter. Surely Amazon are more scary because they know what you do, buy, read, and watch on TV.
Yeah, I have... I'm not giving Amazon a free pass at all. They have a lot of problems with what they're doing. Particularly, one of the things that really bothers me about Amazon that's become an issue lately is the fact that they pay almost no taxes, that they have billions and billions of dollars of sales and pay almost no taxes. And this is unfair to society, because like it or not, nobody likes to pay taxes, but taxation funds some of the most important work that we can do to help people who need help. It funds education, it funds housing, it funds social services. And when these companies like Amazon, like Apple, when they pretend to be socially conscious, but deprive the society of the money that it ought to have to do what is right, this bothers me a lot. So yes, that was Mark in Manchester. Yes, I agree with you. Amazon are no angels. I happen to pick on Facebook a lot because I can't stand Mark Zuckerberg. I think he's a creep. And so it gives me great fun to find out all the creepy things he does and expose them. Google, strangely, I'm not, even though they're probably, they have, they're monopolists and they're somehow, to me, they're not as evil as Facebook. I don't know why. I just have the feeling that there are people at Google who want to do the right thing. Facebook, I think, every time they have an opportunity to lie and cheat, they do it. I think Google is a little, this is just my opinion. I have no proof on this. Google is not quite as evil as Facebook, and Amazon. Amazon's the big, in the long run, Amazon's going to be the big one. Amazon's the one that's going to keep growing because they have their finger in every pie. I wonder how much money they actually make from their retail business. I don't think they break it out by divisions of the company, but I'll bet you they make a substantially larger profit on their cloud services than they do on retail. I have no proof of this, but that's just a guess. But nonetheless, yes, you're right, Mark. Amazon I should spend more time abusing them too. I'll try to do better.
We look forward to seeing that, Bob. So Samantha Scott Sam Scott from Dentsu has a question for you, Bob. This one is about the advice we should give to young people coming into our industry.
Thanks, Lee. Hi, Bob. So thinking about those fresh-faced grads that come into the industry or idealistic about advertising and connecting with people, if they read your book, they might get the impression that we don't know what we think we know. What words of advice would you have for someone coming into the industry to avoid the clowns and charlatans that you talk about in your book?
My advice would be to, let me back up on this a little. I had, to some degree, I think I had an advantage coming into the advertising business because I knew nothing. I knew nothing about advertising. I never took an advertising course. I never took a marketing course. I just walked in and got a job one day, and I knew nothing, and I had to learn from scratch. And I had to use my own judgment on determining what, when people told me things, I had to say, is this true? How do they know this? Is this really true, or is this just a legend? Or is this just, are they just telling me to do things the way they've always done them? And now, I'm not advocating ignorance. I think education is a good thing and people should be educated. But my own personal experience was skepticism is a really important attribute to have in any endeavor, but particularly in advertising, where we really, I think, don't know what we think we know. And so young people, be skeptical. When someone tells you it has to be done this way, ask why. Educate yourself. Don't accept what everyone tells you as truth just because they happen to be older than you or have a bigger title than you or make more money than you. You're probably at least as smart and maybe smarter than they are. And you should develop your own theses about how things work, and you should develop your own point of view on what's important and what's not important in advertising. That would be my advice. Don't take everything you read too seriously. Think for yourself, and most importantly, think creatively. Think about doing things in different ways.
Thanks, Bob. That's a lovely answer, and thanks for your question, Sam. Bob, Kevin Joyner from Crowd has a question for you about what he calls a dichotomy in media buying.
Hi, Bob.
Kevin.
In the book, you lay quite a lot of blame on programmatic buying technology, and you analyze this, and you talk about two types of website: quality publishers and trash websites. And on the trash sites, the inventory is cheaper, and the programmatic platforms and the way we buy favors that. And that's one of the ways that we hurt ourselves in the industry, because that's where the ad fraud is, and that's where the problematic content is. But I wondered if you would accept that really, actually, there is a huge middle ground in terms of the type of website. There's lots of perfectly good niche websites that have their special interest content. The kind of ones that I read are, tech websites, computing websites, but there's all kinds. And we need programmatic technology to place ads on that huge volume and that wide range of websites. So yes, we should rein in tracking, but do you think we should have some other solution than direct media buying?
Yes, and I think you need to develop it, Kevin, because I don't have the intelligence to do it. But the problem is not technology. The problem is how we're using technology. And if we can find a way to use programmatic technology to buy sensibly, I'm all in favor of that. I have no problem. That'd be great. That's what it was supposed to be, right? That's what programmatic was supposed to do. And the problem is it's not doing it. The problem is so much of it. You saw the report from ISBA, is that what you call it? ISBA a couple of weeks ago, that 50% of programmatic ad dollars evaporate before they get to the publisher. Now, imagine yourself, let's say you weren't investing your money in advertising. Let's say you were investing it in stocks, and you went to your broker and you brought him 5,000 pounds, and he took 2,500 of those pounds and he invested 2,500 in stocks. You'd be outraged. You'd go crazy. But that's what's happening. Half of the money that we're investing in programmatic advertising is evaporating before it gets to the publisher, before it can do us any good. Now, I accept that the programmatic technology adds some value to the buy, but not 50%. There's something wrong there. There's something very, very wrong there. So yes, you're right. The technology per se is not the problem. It's the way we have implemented the technology, the way we are using the technology. And like I said, we're drunken sailors about technology. Anything that says technology, we throw money at without really thinking about how it's being used and how it's being abused.
Thanks, Bob. Sanjeev Patel, Sanj from Opticom, has a question for you about marketing in the time of COVID.
Yes, that is a big question, I guess. But yeah, Bob, I guess given your years of experience, what advice would you give planners and strategists in this post-COVID-19 time when they have to plan and try and balance their budgets and marketing split? And I think there's quite a few theories out there. So I guess what really resonates with you that you would probably advise, and anyone
I don't know. I've thought about it a lot, and I really don't know what the correct strategy is right now. There are some companies that are fighting for their life. Let's back up for a second. We know that in tough economic times, those who invest in marketing come out the other end in better shape than those who don't, right? We have case histories on that, and we have some evidence of that. But the problem is there are companies now that are fighting for their lives, and they can't afford to invest in advertising. Even if they know that at the other end, they're going to come out in better shape, they have to live this week. They can't afford to make that investment. So that's number one difficult question. What do you do if you're in that position? Number two is, do you acknowledge the COVID, experience in your advertising, or have we heard enough about that already and we don't really need to be reminded of it in every spot we see? In other words, is the desire to be empathetic, has it been overdone, and are people tired of hearing about it? My guess is yes. My guess is if I were an advertiser, I would go back to my regularly scheduled advertising, my product and brand focused advertising, and leave the COVID story behind. I think it's not that it's not important to society. It's not that we can ignore it. It's just that I think people have heard enough of it from marketers and advertisers, and it's time for us to move on. You know what? It's a judgment call. Who knows what the right answer is? I don't know at this point.
Sanj, are you finding that your clients are wondering if they should communicate differently at this time?
I'm guessing, well, actually, some of our clients who are live have found great value in actually, harnessing their message in their ads. But yeah, I do understand what Bob's saying, as I think it's becoming old news now. But I'm being optimistic and saying it's a recession. It could be even depression. So, there are theories out there which, say go big, bold, and heavier using creative. But I guess, no one ever knows actually what you really should do.
Sanj, are you on the creative side or the media side?
On the media side, yeah.
What do your creative people say? What do they think?
Funny enough, I haven't actually got their views yet on this, but I have read a lot of theories that the big idea or the fame, in actual fact, is it fame or emotion you go after when you're thinking about behavioral economics? In this time, obviously, yeah, it's going to have to be, I think, emotional creativity. But you know, even nonetheless, I think buying is going to be quite difficult in that, whether, you know, we go full on or kind of, you know, trickle through the next 12 months.
Well, I'm going to ask Liz Formoso to ask her second question, because Liz, your question is about creativity.
It is. So Bob, in the book, you're quite bold in saying that most online ads are mediocre and that creativity is lacking. So I've got a few questions.
Did I say mediocre? Did I say mediocre?
You did.
I stated most of them are terrible, not mediocre.
So I was going to ask, what campaign were you sure that you thought was sure to fail and instead performed with success?
I can only refer to campaigns that I did, and I've done. And what I have found is that my barometer is pretty good on guessing what campaigns would be successful and what wouldn't, but it's far from foolproof. And I have had I've done a number of campaigns that I thought would be terrific, and they flopped miserably. And I've done some campaigns that I thought were just crap. And why am I the client is making me do this, and I hate it. And they succeeded. So, yeah, nobody bats 1,000 in this league. That's a baseball metaphor. I don't know if you'll understand it. But yeah, it's like I say in the book, I probably say it too much. It's about likelihoods and probabilities. There are no sure things in advertising. And you can think you have the best spot in the world and it can do nothing. And you can think you have a lousy, terrible thing and it could be successful. And you know, the extent to which you are successful in this business has a lot to do with the extent to which you can calculate likelihoods and probabilities. Is this likely to be successful? Does this, you know, that's as good as you can do, I think, in advertising.
Thank you, Bob. Liz, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, I mean, what can you learn from campaigns that flopped and campaigns that succeeded that you didn't expect? So I guess the learning is advertising is just really unpredictable. So you just kind of got to roll with the punches, really.
Yeah, yeah. You know, you can learn things. I'm not saying you don't learn from experience. Of course you do, but every campaign is different and it occurs at a different time in a different environment. And so sometimes what you think you have learned is not a result of the campaign, it's a result of some other force or something else a competitor was doing. And you think your campaign was successful because it was so brilliant, but it turns out that your competitors, you know, production line broke down and you were able to, you know, benefit from their not being in store. You know, there are a million things that can affect the success of a campaign that you can't control. That's an important thing to understand. And, but generally you learn, you know, as a general rule, you learn as you go on. You get a sense for what's successful and what's not going to be successful. It's just not, it's not 100% thing. It's likelihoods, you know. You learn likelihoods, you don't learn facts in advertising.
Mm.
Bob, Sam Scott's got another question for you. This is, again, about what you describe as marketing by selfie stick.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah, so you highlight the lack of age diversity as the question that Molly asked was quite similar. and the negative impact that it has on our ability to kind of understand the audiences that we're trying to market to. We tend to be full of quite young people, but I work in London, and when you go into agencies and also sales side here, there is a lack of age diversity, but also ethnicity, socioeconomic diversity, just diversity across the board, really. What do you think are the core reasons for our lack of ability to be made up of people that are reflective of the populations we want to advertise to?
Because we have this prejudice on the inside that everyone is like us. And, you know, when I'm talking to you, I say, you know, I understand I understand that people are very different and da. But when I'm evaluating advertising, I kind of snap back to what would people like me think of it? What are my friends going to think of this? What are the people I know going to think of this? And one of the things that I've written about is that here in the US, we have something called the DMV, the Department of Motor Vehicles. And I used to encourage my creative department, the people there, to go to the Department of Motor Vehicles, sit there for an hour and have a good close look at the kind of people that you're advertising to, because they're nothing like you. They don't go to the restaurants you go to. They don't go to the pubs you go to. They don't wear the same clothes that you wear. They don't drive the same cars that you drive. And their points of view are very different. And these are the people that you're writing for and that you're designing for. And if you don't get that, then you're never going to communicate. You're never going to connect with the people who you're supposed to be connecting with. We live in a bubble. We live in a bubble of people like us. It's ridiculous, not just age-wise, race-wise, economically, culturally, and we are just not educated enough in what other people are like. And that's very important for the advertising industry to understand that, and for the people in the advertising industry to broaden their horizon. Because as much as they want to be inclusive, as much as they want to celebrate diversity, there's just, it's very hard for them to do culturally because of where they live, what they do, how they've been brought up. The advertising industry, at least here in the States, it may be different where you are, at least here in the States, is kind of monochromatic. You know, we're trying to be better at this, but we're a far cry from there.
Thanks, Bob. Kev's got another question for you. Kevin Joyner. This one is about privacy. Kevin.
When did Nick get to ask a question? I haven't heard any questions from Nick.
Don't worry, it's coming. We're saving the best till last, mate.
Okay. Get Kevin.
Hi again, Bob. Yeah, so the abuse of privacy in the digital advertising industry is frightening.
Yes.
And more and more players in the ad tech industry are coming to understand that, and that includes some of the biggest. I think that has landed with Google, and I think the writing is on the wall for personal cross-site tracking, you know, that's supported by third-party cookies. Right, this is the tech that enables you to follow someone, an individual around the internet. And Google has set out its plans for the Chrome browser to adopt an open source standard that they're calling, you know, that is called a privacy sandbox. And the idea there is that targeting will be possible only for, you know, fairly large cohorts of people. And there's other details, of course, but this kind of proposal, it protects privacy, and it allows our industry to have a degree of measurement and a degree of targeting. So And there are other initiatives, but that one is really significant, the end of third-party cookies. And I just wonder if, when you think about these developments, does it satisfy you?
No, it won't satisfy me till I see it in action and actually I have actual proof that there aren't other kinds of privacy abusing technologies in place. You're right, the third-party cookie is an important part of privacy abuse, and getting rid of that will be helpful. But that doesn't mean there aren't other kinds of privacy abuse that will continue. And until I see it in action and I see the result of it, I will not be satisfied.
All right. Thank you, Bob. So you're going to do a short reading now.
Oh, good.
From Advertising for Skeptics for us. What have you chosen to read, Bob? Which part of the book?
A piece called Our Principal Problem. Okay, shall I begin?
Please do.
Our principal problem. In most fields of endeavor, progress is achieved by the accretion of knowledge over time. In medicine, for example, we learned of the germ theory of disease. Then we learned that germs were spread by dirty things like flies, mosquitoes, and insects. But it all started with the basic knowledge that diseases weren't caused by frogs or witches, but by germs. In aeronautics, the materials we use to make airplanes are completely different from the ones we used 100 years ago, but we still use the same fundamental design of a fuselage and a pair of wings. The principles of air travel are over 100 years old. Sadly, so is the food, but the principles are still being built on. Copernicus taught us that the universe did not revolve around the Earth, but that the Earth revolved around the sun. Then we discovered that there were other bodies revolving around the sun. Then Newton figured out the mechanism for all of this, gravity. One discovery leads to another. Advertising is different. We respect no history. We observe no principles. We have no connective tissue. Every generation tosses out what was learned before and declares it dead. Marketing is dead. The big idea is dead. Positioning is dead. Brands are dead. The funnel is dead. Traditional media are dead. Every generation invents its own dreadful jargon that for a brief time passes for wisdom. Lyconomics, engagement, conversations, storytelling, empowerment. The absence of verifiable principles is the dirty little secret behind why we engender so little respect in the business community. Well, that and Gary Vaynerchuk. In most disciplines, there are unifying principles. Some examples. Physics has the law of conservation of energy. Biology has natural selection. Economics has supply and demand. These are fundamental to the nature of the endeavor. In advertising, what are the proven unifying fundamental principles that we all accept? If there are any, I don't know what they are. A field of endeavor without principles is not a discipline, it's a free-for-all. We used to believe that creativity was the essence of successful advertising, not so much anymore. We used to believe that big ideas were the backbone of outstanding advertising, not so much anymore. We used to believe that an agency's primary job was the delivery of outstanding ads to its clients, not today. What do we believe in now? Lyconomics, engagement, conversations, storytelling, and empowerment. These aren't principles. These are the dreadful cliches of a tired industry.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Another question. This is coming from Lorna, who's in Shrewsbury. And it's a simple one. What gives you hope for the future of marketing and advertising?
Well, what I could hope for will never happen, but I can hope for it. And that is the return to the entrepreneurial advertising agency and the disappearance of the huge global holding companies. I think the huge global holding, and I apologize to those of you who work for huge global holding companies. I know probably most of you do. They have changed the culture of the advertising industry in what I think is a bad way. the advertising industry used to be a bottom-up industry where an account person and a media person and a creative person would get together and start an agency, and they would grow it, and it would hopefully thrive, and then another creative person and another marketing person, another media person from that agency would say, screw these guys, we can do better than they can, and they would start their own, and that would grow. Now it's a top-down industry where big holding companies, instead of agencies growing from grassroots, they're being bought top-down and integrated into big things. And the bigger the things are, the more we are ruled by Wall Street rather than what's right for us, what's right for our employees, what's right for our clients. More and more, it's about what's right for investors. I have nothing against investors. They're entitled to a reasonable return on their investment. But when you start neglecting what's important to your industry to the extent that it harms it in order to return money to the investors, that's where you get in trouble, and that's where we have gotten in trouble, I think. And I think the corporate ad agencies are not, and it's reflected in the work. You talk to any marketing person, they're going to tell you advertising isn't as effective as it once was. And there's no one to blame for that but ourselves. We can do all the finger pointing we want, but it's our responsibility to make advertising effective, and we've made it less effective. And I think a lot of that has to do with the nature of the industry as a big corporate Wall Street kind of industry that it never was before.
Thanks, Bob. Bethan Corlett from the 7 Stars wants to talk about a revolution. Beth.
A revolution, cool.
So I really enjoyed the chapter in the book where you talk about the danger in the industry, and it kind of it felt like you were invoking a revolution. And I guess my question is, obviously you kind of already touched on the Google monopoly, and it feels like Google has such a stronghold on advertising. The ad servers that the agencies use, the Google Analytics that are on our clients' sites. They kind of have that monopoly across the whole of the industry, and it's very hard to not touch the Google, universe at some point along the thread. So my question was, obviously Google are getting rid of cookies in Chrome next year, and do you think that in a way they've kind of shot themselves in the foot, because it's kind of taking away the biggest source of tracking? Or it's the biggest removal of tracking that's kind of shaking up the industry so far. Do you think they've kind of shot themselves in the foot, and that they're going to spark that revolution off the back of that? Or do you think we're all just going to pivot to another method of, tracking and measurement?
They don't have a history of shooting themselves in the foot. So I would be surprised if there isn't a plan B back there somewhere to retain all the business that we think they may be losing. I am, like I said before, I'm officially skeptical, and I'm always officially skeptical until I see results. So I think Google knows what they're doing. I don't know what it is, but a revolution, I doubt it. I think, they're pretty smart. They know what they're doing, and I don't think this is going to do much harm to them, but we'll see. Maybe it will. Maybe it's a bigger deal than I think it is. We'll see.
Hey, Bob, another question from Genevieve Barrett. Jen, you have a question about Gen Z, as they're called.
I do. I guess I'm jumping back a little bit to the beginning and Molly's question, because I really loved your chapter about the millennial hustle. So I wondered, do you think that we're about to do the same thing that we've done with millennials with Gen Z, by obsessing over them, about how to reach them and treating them, as you say, like a new species? And the second part of my question, why are we still so tempted by demographic targeting instead of behavioral targeting?
First part, yes, we are going to do exactly the same thing we did with millennials, with Gen Z. The idea that there's a whole generation of people who are the same, or that you can put into a basket and say they all do this or they all do that, is ridiculous. I think there's as much diversity within generations as there is between generations. And but the research industry and the marketing industry has to make money, and they have to every 15 or 20 years they invent a new generation that's completely different, that they understand, and that every brand has to, you know, utilize their and hire them so that the brand can understand this new species of human beings. I think it's mainly baloney, and and the answer to your question is yes, we are going to do the same thing with Gen Z that we did with millennials. The second part of your question was, I forget. Tell me again.
Why are we still so tempted by demographic targeting instead of concentrating on behavioral targeting?
It's easier. I think it's just, you know, understanding behavior is difficult. And it's easier to just, you know, take the numbers and make little boxes around the numbers. And it's an easier way to look at stuff. And there's nothing, you know, exceptionally wrong with demographic targeting if you do it correctly and you're not crazy. And but you know, you're a better judge of that than I am. I'm a copywriter, I'm not a media person. So you could probably answer that question better than I can. Why is the media world so stuck in certain ways of doing things? I don't know. I don't know the answer.
Okay, Bob, your penultimate question is coming up. It's from Nick Moxon from the Universal Music Group. And Nick wants to ask you a question about contradictions.
Hi, Bob. So yeah, in your book, you talk about Sharp and Ritson's theories and how they're examples of ways that make advertising endlessly fascinating. What is your most fascinating contradiction in the advertising industry, and why?
My most fascinating contradiction in the advertising industry as we practice advertising, you mean?
Yeah.
That's a really tough question. There are so many contradictions. I guess the most fascinating one is the contradiction between whether we think people behave rationally or emotionally, okay? And I think you can make a very good case for both sides. You can make a very good case that people don't buy, that people are rational. They don't buy crap that they don't need. They don't waste their money on stupid stuff. And you can do example after example of that. And then you can make an equally good case that people behave crazily, that they'll save money on buying you know, a tube of toothpaste and then spend extravagantly on a car that is no different basically from another car that costs $20,000 less but has prestige attached to it. So the contradiction between the emotional behavior of consumers and the rational behavior of consumers is hard to reconcile. And that's, I think I wrote in the book, what I call quantum advertising. And that is sometimes we behave X, sometimes we behave Y. And just like in quantum physics, a particle can sometimes be a wave, be defined as a wave, and sometimes as a particle. human beings sometimes behave rationally and sometimes behave emotionally, and it's a contradiction in behavior, but that's the reality. Sometimes consumers are rational, sometimes they are emotional, and it's hard to know when. And it's hard to know how they can behave. And sometimes the same person purchasing in the same category will behave emotionally and sometimes will behave rationally. And that, I guess, is, as far as I'm concerned, the biggest contradiction and the hardest one to understand, and the one that I think the marketing industry understands least.
Nick, you're in the
Amazing.
business of marketing music. Do you think when people are thinking about music, then behaving more emotionally or rationally?
Yeah, I think they're behaving emotionally. Yeah, I mean, music is an emotional product, isn't it? It triggers emotions, and it is used by people to kind of speak to their emotions. And that is one thing that I am constantly trying to push within the music industry, is that we need to kind of be aware that people are acting on emotional impulses as opposed to just rational behavior. And I think the default position for many marketeers is that people will act rationally, and you'll go, click here to listen to this artist because we know you like it, is not necessarily something that people would decide to do. And actually getting them to engage in something that's got the sound on and is a beautiful kind of creative is from what I can see as well, is a much more effective way of getting people into music and driving that discovery. And that's a huge contradiction I see in the music industry, in the sense of we're supposed to be creatives, but we spend all our time looking at click-through metrics.
Thanks, Nick. Well, Bob, this has been emotional for me. I'm going to ask Bethan to put our final question to you. She'd like to indulge you in a fantasy. Bethan.
Ooh, now we're talking.
Some fantasy. So when are you bringing out a fantasy book? No, I'm joking. So my question is, putting aside your successful book writing that you've managed to, gain off, and also your blog from bashing Google and Facebook, in a completely sort of hypothetical sense, if you could click your fingers and completely remove Google and Facebook from the internet and all of their sub-companies and hidden technologies and patents and everything else that goes with them, would you click your fingers and completely remove Google and Facebook? Or
in a second, yes. It's hard to figure out what the outcome of that might be. In fact, we might wind up with worse companies, who knows? But I think a fresh start would be lovely for the web. The web has so much promise. There are so many great things that have been done and can be done on the web and with digital technology. A lot of people think I'm a technology Luddite. I actually was a science teacher, and I love technology. And I just think we have done such a bad job. You know as well as I do that technology can be used for wonderful purposes, and it can also be used for making nuclear weapons. Technology is neither good or bad, it's how we use it. And I think we've been using it in a very poor way that has harmed our industry, that has harmed consumers, and that has harmed the results we're getting for our clients. And I would love to see a fresh start, and I'd love to see what that would be like. But like you say, Bethan, it's a fantasy. It ain't gonna happen.
Bob Hoffman, thank you very much for being our guest on Book Club this month and for talking about advertising for skeptics. And thanks, of course, to our audience of readers who took part today. If you'd like to join us on one of these recordings, please do get in touch via our website. Next month, on Friday the 10th of July, we'll be joined by another American author, Heather Lefevre, who will be discussing her book, Brain Surfing. We do hope to see you all then.